Hello and welcome. Genero applications power some of the most important processes in the enterprise. Inventory management, supply chain platforms, systems that the business depends on every single day. Questions like these are increasingly common as enterprise systems need to work together. Mission-critical applications cannot operate in isolation. They need to connect to partner systems, external services, and platforms both inside and outside the organization. Genero Web Services, or GWS, handles just that. Genero Web Services allows Genero application to implement web services, the standard way for applications to communicate over the internet or an intranet. There's no separate download. Genero Web Services libraries come bundled inside Genero BDL installation you already have. The first question to ask yourself when working with Genero Web Services is, am I the client or am I the server? This distinction matters because the code you write and the libraries you use are different for each role. If you are the client or consumer, you are calling someone else's web service and receiving their response. Also, both sides don't need to be Genero. Your Genero application can consume a web service written in Java, .NET, or Python, and vice versa. Let me bring this to life with a real example. The business requirement here is two-factor authentication. When a user logs into Genero application, the system needs to verify their identity by sending them a PIN via SMS or email and confirming they entered it correctly. Rather than building this capability from scratch, the application reaches out to Twilio's Verify API as an external web service. Here's how it's structured in Genero BDL. The Twilio integration is packaged as a reusable library, Twilio Verify Library. The service interface module handles the actual web service calls to Twilio. And Twilio interface wraps it cleanly so the rest of the application simply calls a function without ever touching the HTTP layer directly. Let's start by entering the phone number. Now, when the user clicks Send Code, the Genero application sends an HTTP request to Twilio's API passing the account credentials. Twilio processes the request and sends back a response. If successful, the PIN is delivered to the user instantly. And here, on Twilio's own dashboard, you can see the confirmation that the message was sent. The user enters the received PIN. Then the Genero application makes a second call to Twilio to validate it, and the PIN is verified. Two web service calls cleanly handled within Genero BDL, invisible to the user, and entirely driven by your Genero application acting as the client. This is what Genero Web Services makes possible on the client side. Your Genero application connected to a third-party platform it had never spoken to before, securely and efficiently. That's the client side. Now let's flip it. What happens when your Genero application is the one setting the rules? If you are the server or provider, your Genero application exposes a service. It sits and listens for requests from other systems and returns a response. You are setting the URL, the format, and the data. Here, Genero application is the server. It is exposing its own data as a REST API for external systems to consume. We are setting the rules. The service is built using Genero Web Services high-level REST framework in Genero BDL. When the service starts, it spins up an in-memory SQLite database and begins listening for requests. Any external system that can make an HTTP call can now access this data. Let's start simple. Fetch all customer records. One HTTP call, and the Genero application returns the full dataset as clean JSON, ready to be consumed by any external system immediately. Now let's filter all customers from the state Illinois. The API accepts column. value, and operator parameters, so any external system can query your Genero data precisely without pulling everything and filtering on their end. And next, all stores with a store number greater than 500. We just changed the value of the parameters to meet this use case. A logistics system, a reporting dashboard, a partner platform, any of them can query your Genero application's data directly in real time through a clean REST API. This is Genero Web Services on the server side. Your application, your data, your business logic exposed as a REST API built entirely within Genero BDL, ready for any system to consume. You have just seen REST in action, but REST is only one side of the story. Genero Web Services also supports SOAP. If a provider gives you a WSDL file, they're using SOAP. No WSDL? It's likely REST. Starting with the high-level framework for SOAP, a tool called FGL WSDL automatically generates stubs for both client and server, so you can get up and running with minimal manual coding. For REST, the high-level framework follows the Open API standard, and a tool called FGL RESTful generates Open API compliant stubs automatically. WS attributes let you integrate directly into your BDL functions with very little extra code. When you need more control, the low-level framework gives you direct access via HTTP request and HTTP response, letting you handle the full HTTP layer manually, manipulate the raw XML payload for SOAP, or fine-tune performance and payload handling for REST. So whichever protocol you are using, SOAP or REST, Genero Web Services gives you two paths. We showed you high-level REST because it is faster and easier to integrate, but you can always drop to low-level when the integration demands it. So, what does Genero Web Services mean in practice for your team? First, there's no separate framework to install or license. It is bundled along with Genero BDL. If your team is writing Genero applications, they already have everything they need to start building web services. Second, the high-level framework removes a significant amount of complexity. Your developers write Genero functions with a handful of attributes, and Genero Web Services handles the HTTP layer. That means faster development, fewer points of failure, and code that's much easier to maintain. Third, your Genero applications can integrate with virtually any external system. Whether it's a legacy enterprise system via SOAP, a modern third-party API via REST, or a partner platform that doesn't need Genero at all, GWS handles it. And fourth, when you move to production, Genero Application Server gives you the process management, request queuing, and scalability your mission-critical Genero applications need. Genero Web Services gives your applications the ability to connect to any system, as a server, as a client, over SOAP or REST. Check out the documentation or contact your local support team to know more. Genero Web Services, built for what matters.